Good to be back with you. Hey, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome back. We are back, and can't tell you how good it feels. I've missed this. I hope you missed it, and I'm sorry if you have as well. It just had to happen. So life goes on. Sometimes you get, oh wow, how long you guys been here? Goodness gracious. All right, I'm in top chat. I can see everybody and everything. Sweet. Well, this is ADRAMADA, and we have been on sabbatical since mid-November because of job changes and all of the, well, I spelled that wrong, sabbatical, that happened with those job changes, training and time and so forth. So I had to shut the show down last year. We're generally back. There will be some adjustment days in the coming weeks and months, but by and large, it's Thursday night. It's 7 o'clock in Central Time, 7 p.m., and you have found ADRAMADA, another Dave Rush Ask Me Anything. Digital Alchemy, I am your host, the aforementioned David Rush, also known as Commodore ADRAMADA, and you are the wind of the sails of this little get-together. You are the proud, you are the brave, the ADRAMADA Armada. Thanks for coming back. We got a good turnout for comebacks. What's the numbers here look like? Sweet. Okay. The turnout is usual, but there's a lot of activity there. Hey, well, okay, so I spent a lot of time prepping the show topic. I spent almost no time, except for the last hour, hour and a half, doing show prep presentation, getting news and making slides and all that. So no slides at all for anything that I'm doing this week. And mostly impromptu. I've got an outline to work with from, and there are some cool things that I do want to talk to you about. First and foremost, it is a new year. We have reached the year 2025. What a great number. All the cool math ways that you can write that up and deconstruct it and reconstruct it, but it's so much easier to remember in my mind and to write down than 2024. Nothing wrong with 2024, but you know, we all make that mistake early in the year. For the first month or two, you accidentally write down the previous year. I haven't yet made that mistake, or if I haven't caught it. It is January 5th as we record this live. If you're not here live, enjoy the show on the archive. And all of our other shows are available on the archive if you would like to so enjoy. There's a lot of really cool topics that we have covered over the last year plus. I think this February is going to mark our second anniversary since we launched. What I'm doing right now is putting contact information and links in the chat feed. If you want to see some of our other offerings, contact me in any way. This isn't everything in the world. There's another one that I got to add to the list. I'll talk about that in just a momento. For those of you who are interested, because it's been so long since we've gotten together as a social group, right after the show, we're heading over to the Discord server. I just put the link in the chat channel. Just to hang. We're just going to have a little social get-together, shoot the breeze, mellow out, do whatever it is that makes you mellow. Yeah, okay. Just leave it at that here. So I don't know what voice channel is, but whichever one you see is active, join that one. Texas, where I live. I'm down here, if you're new to the show, in Houston, Texas. Texas is experiencing a cold snap right now. Not cold like some of you endure during the colder months of the year, but for us, it's pretty nasty. The low has been in 30 or so all week, and the high's been about 40, 41, something like that. Rain today and tonight, so we're freeze watching. And the last freeze we had here in this neck of the woods was devastating. A lot of home damage, burst pipes, things like that. People out of power for weeks or months. I can't even remember now. 5 days, 10 days, something like that. I only remember the big one when I was out for 14. That was a hurricane a while back. But because of the cold snap here, I've got some plants out there covered, and I had to bring a bunch of them in. And I'm telling you, if the cops made a friendly visit and said, "Hey, what you got going on in there? What's all them plants?" It's okay. They are Bolivian sunflower trees, which after about 7 months or so of planting from cuttings, a stalk cutting about yay big, they are now approaching 3 feet tall. They can handle the cold. They drop all their leaves, and then in spring they all pop out again. But I'm enjoying them, so I brought them all in. Speaking of inclement weather, California, in the midst of another set of wildfires. They are poorly contained right now for a variety of reasons. And we won't enumerate them because they will change as time goes by and the spin gets put on it. Nonetheless, we are praying for the safety and welfare of all and a successful ramp up in the efforts of resources and person power to combat that blaze. On a related note, sorry, I'm moving my mouse around and I don't see it moving. That's what you call a bad thing. We need mouse. Battery's not dead. Good golly, Miss Molly, this could be a problem. Is the battery dead? You got a nice blinding eyeful there. Some days it's just not worth it, is it? Those batteries are going to fall out because I just knocked over the cover. Sorry, stand by. Technical difficulties. Please stand by. Flashlight on. Really? Flashlight. Oh, that's not a flashlight. That's a flashlight. There it is. Well, if I don't get that resolved, about 10 minutes of the show is going to vanish, and it's probably just as well. I think the batteries are failing in this. Ugh. Have you ever noticed when a battery fails in a mouse, all modern mice, that the light doesn't go out, it goes on super insane bright. So that's what's happened here. All right, turn that around. Whenever you got dead pair of batteries, you can often squeeze a few more minutes of life out of them by swapping the batteries. Dropped it again. All right, go away in a voo. I'm not surprised that didn't work. What to do? Just for hoots, we'll unplug and replug in the wireless dongle. And okay, I got mouse. Look at that. All right. Cold snaps, California wildfires. Oh, on a related note, I hear that the NHL hockey team, the Calgary Flames, are considering changing the team name because it offends some Californians. Grin. I want to tell you a little bit about show prep today. I mentioned how much or how little I did, but usually before a show, on the techno side, I do a few things. I update Windows, I reboot the computer. I'm doing this on a Windows machine this week. And I update any of the programs that I use to conduct the show. One of the programs I use to stream, the program I use to stream, is OBS. So I went in the other day to update it. OBS, help, about, update, click. Nothing happened. And it says you're using the most current version. I tried that a few more times because I didn't buy that. It's been ages since I updated. Then I went and tried it on another computer that I run OBS on. Got the identical results. So I went online and did a search using a copy-paste from the labels in the menu. And turns out I did not update it. That's good news, bad news. On the OBS support forum, it says we have disabled updating for the moment because our updater has some kind of malware or problem that's causing failures in OBS installation. So glad I wasn't successful. Or we'd have there's a backup, but yeah. All right, did that. Okay, it's a new year. I got a new job. I changed. I was unemployed for about a year after I left my old company with Mike Myers. And because of a non-compete agreement, I wasn't able to do what I wanted to do. So my side hustle is keeps me going, and that's fine. But I wanted to get back into the techno side, and some of them were clearly competitive, and some of them I just didn't want to get involved in any potential litigation. So I sat on my butt until that non-compete expired. So it expired, and I had been volunteering over at Snaju/Darknode. We've had their people on in the past, and they are a provider of rack mount servers within a data center, in the TRG data center. And I spent a bunch of time with them that turned out to be seasonal employment. It was never scheduled to be that way, but there was some financial problems keeping a new guy on right now. So I was there building and learning and networking and building and building and building and building. And then they moved me over primarily to Tier 1 NOC support, handling tickets, bottom line, and handled what I could, and a lot of the stuff they hadn't taught me how to do yet, so forwarded on to people who could move it up to, let's call it Tier 2. But I worked through Cyber Monday and Black Friday, and so much ordering, and so many new servers, and so many new that we were overwhelmed with all the tickets. Where's my server? How come I can't see it yet? You send me a report, my server's up, but I can't access it. How do I access it? And when there were people who, because of the price, purchased or rented servers and had no idea what to do with them. How do I log into this thing? What do I do with it once I'm logged in? Wow, huh? So at any rate, that dried up, and okay, I'll take a month off or so. This is a terrible month. The first quarter of any year is always a terrible month to job hunt. But I got this post in my mail from a scan that I do every day, an automated scan on LinkedIn jobs and things like that. And it said, we need an A+, Network Plus, Security Plus instructor, remote. Hello! It's what I've done for the last 14 years, minus the year off. So I went and immediately applied. And what happened? Sorry, this position has already been filled. The application window is closed. And I mean, I responded within about 10 minutes of having received that. So I was heartbroken. And I said, this cannot be the end. This posting has everything in it about me except my name. So I looked up the company, and I looked up the boss, and I wrote him an email. And I said, this is rude. It's beyond the pale. No one should ever do what I'm doing to you. But your app closed, and we fit. We beyond fit. So please take this email, and here's my paperwork and my submission, and reconsider the closure. And we got together the next day. No, I'm dead serious. Oh, I haven't read the messages yet. So next day, we're on the phone, and he said, wow, glad you wrote, because we reopened that app, and now we're closing it. You're the guy. So it's taken a little while to get all the nuts and bolts put together, but I am teaching 6 classes a week for this new company. It's a contract job through the spring semester through until summer session starts. But wow, what a different world. Instruction is instruction, but these are young people, high school students, and it's an audience that I have never done as a full-time thing. Got into classrooms as a guest presenter and things like that, but this is all very new to me. They're wonderful young adults. They are mature, they are smart, they are dedicated, and this is several different schools. So, wow, what a fantastic group. Here's what is so really different for me then. I've never been a teacher in a school system. I feel for them now so much more than I ever did. There is so much to do that isn't in the class. Yeah, lesson planning and things like that, that's native and natural to me. But the attendance and the gradings and the reports and the wow. So I've still got a lot of that to get caught up, and I'll be doing a bunch tomorrow. I have no classes on Friday. Friday is my day to do paperwork and all that. Well, you guys are going nuts over on the Discord server. What is cooking over there? And for Jason, if you're watching right now, I'm sure you are. I see your name. He's right here. He's been right there for 5 or 6 months. All right, so that's done, that's done, that's done, that's done. In the meantime, because it's only 6 classes and all the other stuff that goes with it, my side hustles are still hopping like mad. We weren't supposed to start any side hustle contracts until February. I got 3 next week, plus next week I'm going back to Wash Fest. The Wash Fest, that's the Washer Fest, but it's officially called Wash Fest. And that's sort of like horseshoes with a big washer and one little pin that you have to get the washer on, however far apart it is. I worked that last year. They liked what we did last year. They called us a month or 2 ago and said, "You guys are coming back, right?" Oh, heck yeah. And can you bring more? Can you do more? Heck yeah. So next weekend, I'm at Wash Fest in East Bernard, Texas. Look it up. Come on down. But it's the national championship, so you can't throw. You got to win a tournament. People come in from other countries for this event. And it's beyond description. I'll take some pictures next week. Other promotions. Oh, yeah. So one other thing is going on. Some of you guys know this because I've sort of mentioned it informally on the other platforms. On Reddit, there is a subreddit called CompTIA, r/CompTIA. And people who are interested in pursuing and promoting and sometimes denigrating CompTIA and preparing for exams, that is the biggest online site to go and do this. We've got 250,000 members. I've been very active in it for a number of years, and their moderator list, while it's still got a lot of names in it, there was only one active mod, and there was a lot of nastiness that was happening on there. And so one day, that active mod contacted me and a couple of other folks who really love and participate that sub, and they asked a few of us to become mods, and I am now one of the 5 total moderators of r/CompTIA. So come on over there. I'll treat you right, but I can't speak for the other mods. But we're trying to clean the place up. We're trying to turn it back into what it was, a place that was CompTIA focused. People were turning it into Job Hunt Central and bash this courseware provider, and not my thing. Tonight, as we speak, there are 2 things going on that I am missing. One, college football playoffs. First game of the quarters. I'll live. It's not a team I'm into. Tomorrow night, however, is the Cotton Bowl with the Ohio State Buckeyes versus the Texas Longhorns at 7:30 Eastern Time, 6:30 Central Time, and you're on your own to look it up if you're not in either of those time zones. We are a house divided. Ohioans, mom and dad. Son lives in Texas Longhorn City, Austin. Not a big lover of them, but he's not a big hater of them. But he went initially to an SEC school, and the Longhorns are SEC, so he is pro-SEC. So we are a house divided not just by miles, but by football conference following. The other thing that's going on right now that I had to say no to, and it's killing me, our friend Mike is having a lab party at his place tonight, using Raspberries and other goodies to set up home assist, yeah. And we talked on the phone the other day and compared some notes and things like that. He said, we got a couple of guys coming over, a couple of folks coming over to work on some of these labs and see what we can work. You want to come? Yes, I want to come. Oh, show night. So I'll hear the report later. On our last show in mid-November, we looked at AC-powered devices, or devices that make AC powers. We looked at generators, motors, magnets, inverters, and such. Good stuff to know about in general, and especially in power emergencies. Tonight's show, our Return to the Air special, is all about rack servers. What makes them different than traditional PCs? What are their common uses? All kinds of goodies like that. So what I'm going to do is a quick set of news, what's been in the tech news of late. Again, I'm kind of doing this semi-extemporaneously, not quite off the top of my head. I'm going to be checking out a website that's one of my common news sources. And then we're going to get into rack servers. And I'm not going to finish it, but we will introduce some of the really critical and interesting things. And I think I will probably make this a two-part show. So, did that. Where are we getting? Okay. The first interesting news for me this week, and hopefully some of you, is Raspberry Pi organization, Raspberry Pi trading. That's the technical invent the technology side, as opposed to Raspberry Pi Foundation. That's what they are. That's their charitable arm. That's and the two work symbiotically. But Raspberry Pi Trading has introduced a bunch of new products over the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks, something like that. All of them have been interesting, but not interesting enough for me to post them in any of my places, like the Discord server and on X and things like that. However, today, woke up, slapped in the face with cold, boiling water. A new model of the Pi 5 was introduced today. They have 2 gig models, they have 4 gig models, they have 8 gig models. And now they have a 16 gig Raspberry Pi 5. And it's not just more RAM, it's got some other performance enhancements, including the new revision for the onboard computer in there, the system on a chip. It's revision D0, if you care that much. Makes it better, stronger, faster, smaller, able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. It's $120. And that's how much it is. That's not the list price. That's what everybody does and will charge for most of its life. Should I get it? Yes, I should. But wow, that's exciting. All right, let me head over to my other little handy-dandy news site. We'll just cherry pick a couple of these. I'm entitling this one, What Could Go Wrong? And especially in Australia, where they've done similar things like this a couple times, and they have all gone horribly wrong. Australian scientists engineer a new toxic male mosquito to combat deadly diseases. Well, they're combating them because it's basically mosquito genocide when the male gets together. He poisons the offspring with spider and sea anemone venom. What could go wrong? I have no love for mosquitoes, but they are an important part of the ecosystem. They feed the birds and the bats, and the birds feed the. So you get the idea here. New super cold fridge. This is kind of cool. I read this the other day, and then the new piece came out about 3 hours ago. Some guy used ChatGPT to control a gun turret. It had a Nerf gun on it, or a laser pointer gun on it, but it could aim, and all of it was developed on ChatGPT. The ChatGPT folks, OpenAI, shut down his project today. But genie's out of the bottle. Don't care about that. Don't care about that. Don't care about that. I read all these before the show. I just didn't mark them. Clever clotting for medical devices stops clever coating for medical devices stop clots by imitating a blood vessel. So that's an interesting thing, right? Blood vessels, because of their internal chemistry, don't naturally support flowing blood from clotting. But as soon as it leaves the blood vessel, just about anything it touches, including air, causes clotting to begin. So they've got this neat new coating that will go inside tubing and inside various aspects of medical devices that transport blood that will help reduce or eliminate clotting in those devices. That's kind of cool. Drones with legs. Robots can now walk through muddy and slippery terrain. Liquid crystal glasses. I like this headline. Filter out epileptic seizure triggering light. So we all remember the Pokemon episode a few years ago. They had flashing lights and triggered a lot of seizures in kids watching the show. So you can watch the show now, kids. Just wear these glasses. And the new game changer battery, EV battery that lasts for decades. How many times do we read that? That was a cool one. That one's pie in the sky. Maybe I read that. That wasn't that interesting. I don't know how to categorize this one. Is it tech news? Sure. So there's a lot of new EV vehicles out there. And we mostly tend to think of them in the forms of cars and maybe transport vans. And they're trying it, of course, with bigger things. They're trying it on relatively light aircraft and heavier pieces of equipment. And here is a showcase of one. An 18,000 kilogram, that's about 20 regular tons, about 40,000 pounds, autonomously loading gold in a Canadian gold mine with a high-performance 540 kilowatt electric drivetrain and, big surprise, a massive battery. If you want to look that one up, just look up 18,000 kg EV and maybe throw in the word gold. Cancer-killing, remote-controlled gene therapy. This is now starting to get old. Surgical robots that learn tasks by watching videos and then started doing surgery, even learning to correct their own mistakes. You know what? If they're still making mistakes, I'm not interested. No, it's okay. I can fix it. Not fast enough for me. Dog drug could extend human lifespans. All right, that's about as far as I want to drag that. Tiny VR goggles for mice. Just the picture alone is hilarious. These great big goggles on this tiny little mouse face. All right, that's news of the week. Let's see what you guys are talking about, and then we'll get into El Proyecto. Ew, lots of stuff over here. Jason Helms was the first one in 20 minutes before showtime. Followed 10 minutes later by Tulowit. And people start saying hi. You guys are all in about 10 minutes early. Good for you. Andromeda back. And new Glen Maiden flight set for 1 a.m. I can do that. I'm working from the house tomorrow. Eating dinner rapidly. Okay. Oh, that's right, because you got to take your dad someplace and then get back and see if you can catch the show. Welcome back. Glad you made it. Patricia Grace admonishes Tulowit. And we're back. Hey, good to see you, P4EZ. It's got to be a cool way to pronounce that, P4Z. What's up? So here came actual showtime, and 5 by 5, says Patricia. Thank you. We are live. We are heard. Where you been? You know where I've been. We've been hanging with you guys in other places. All right, there's all my links that happened between 7:03 and 7:03. Little Tinny. I'll take Tinny. If you tell me that it gets worse, we know we're going to reboot. And the usual drill, if we reboot, I'll be back in 4 minutes or less. This machine is fast. Oh, yeah, that was you booping me? Okay. 7-second delay. Okay. That's about normal for YouTube. Yeah, there's lots of interesting things coming out of CES. The problem with that is, in my mind, every goofball who hears something says, here's the top 10 reveals at CES. And it's that person's top 10. Here's another top 10 that may have some crossover, may doesn't. And I always hate those when they come out during Consumer Electronics Show. And so I wait for a good set of reviews a day or two after CES is finished. So I haven't paid any attention to any of these reports except, the one headline product or the one first line that's in there. And, none of them has really grabbed me so hard that says, wow, that's a really great new technology. There's one that you stand on a platform, it's low, and some kind of light paints you 360, and it diagnoses you. Whatever ails you, it will tell you. Potentially interesting. Got my doubts. One or two other things, wacky things like that, but certainly nothing mainstream. If they're going to try and make that mainstream, just $15,000, and you can get a physical every day without a physician. I like my physician. Yes, there is internet delay. Reading messages here. I'm on the big screen. You saw that in Home Defense. Yeah, Home Defense. I think it was on TikTok, ChatGPT, Gun Turret. Yeah. I mean, it made all the social platforms. Midnight my time. Okay. Yeah, I'll check out the. Yeah, we can talk about it on our get together after the show. Actually intended for pronunciation. P4EZ. 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 Okay. That was fun. Saw a bit about foldable laptops. Didn't recognize the YouTube channel that we're sharing video from CES. Okay. CES 3 words. Robot vacuum mop. That sounds about right. I like that. I like the look after the John Deere. Yeah, John Deere is unhappy campers because there's been legislation that mandates they allow third-party repairs, and as part of that same legislation, the ability for McDonald's franchise owners to fix their, whatever they call it, it's not Frosty, but whatever their ice cream drink label is. Somebody will tell me what that is. All right, okay, so we're done with that. We got about a half an hour to talk about rack servers. So let's do that. We're going to start with something that hopefully we have a fairly good handle on. What's a server? A server is a computer or a device with a program that provides a service. So when we think of computer-based servers, a printer is a server. Not a very good one, but then there's print servers, and they kind of add capability to a printer. But we tend to think of servers like web servers and file servers and email servers and virtual machine servers and database servers and things like that. And you can run a server on any kind of computer as long as it has horsepower, enough RAM to do the job, enough storage to do the job, whatever. But our PCs aren't designed to handle 100 users, 1,000 users, 10,000 users. And even if they were, there are features and functions built into enterprise servers, rack servers, that just don't exist in PCs. So we're going to talk about enterprise rack servers. And they do make enterprise non-rack servers. They make them in tower formats that would fit under a desktop. they got more power and capability than a traditional PC tower under there, but not usually as much as a rack grade one. And I'm going to pull one up here on camera in just a couple seconds. So yeah, there's our focus here. Enter the rack server, commonly called a pizza box server. I'm not going to be able to get this on screen very much. This thing weighs about 45 pounds. Let me move this over so I can see. There we go. Okay, that's the bottom of it. Taking the cover off the top of this so we can see a little bit into the top. One of the things that you may notice, you won't notice very well, down under my chin, all the way down near the, out of camera, I guess. Raise that up a little higher. Down here by my fingers that are bouncing on it, that is a CPU heatsink. It's just a bunch of aluminum fins. And there's another one of those under this black rhombic shaped thing near the top of the screen, this little guy. And we have that there to help direct airflow. There are, if you can kind of sort of tell, a half a dozen fans here. So we don't top mount a fan on the CPU here. And the reason we don't do that is because this is designed at its height to fit into one rack space. So there's not enough room to get a CPU, a desktop type CPU fan mounted on top of that. So down here we've got these 6 really powerful fans. 8. There's 4 and 4 here blowing over those. And 1 CPU, 2 CPUs, 4 CPUs, 10 CPUs. They come in all kinds of different models. The more CPUs and the more memory they support, obviously, the more expensive they are. Down here, I've got a bunch of RAM. I got another similar amount up here. Each one is supporting each of the 2 PCs. And in the middle of the system, hey, there's some more RAM. And here's some more RAM slots, and here's some more RAM slots. This particular box has 256 gigs of RAM in it. I can ramp it up to 768 if I use bigger RAM modules and fully pack up all of those slots. On the back is fairly traditional ports. So there's a couple of USB ports on here. There is a power connector. There is network interface ports. And you can see a block of 4 of them on the left side of the screen. If I'm not reversed, I'm not. And then there's another one underneath in the center of that little shallow bay area. The 4 are for outbound and inbound connections to the world. The 1 is for processes internal to where we're managing this thing, to talk to the server, not to the processes, not to the programs, not to the operating system, but actually to the guts of the hardware. There's one other really interesting thing in here on the back that it was getting heavy, all right? I'm holding it up. There's a VGA connector on there. You will seldom, even in the most modern systems, find an HDMI or a DisplayPort connector. They're almost always VGA. So if you're shopping and you're at a thrift store, you're at a flea market, and you see a server and it's got a VGA connector, don't walk by and think, oh man, that's old and outdated. That thing might have been made yesterday. There are things you can look at and say, oh, that's outdated, but the video connector ain't one of them. On the front of this particular model, this is a Super Micro, big name in rack mount servers. There's just hard drive bays, or SSD bays. They're 3.5-inch bays. Am I up high enough? Yeah, it should be close enough. There's 4 in this system, and I want to get into that in just a couple seconds because they're available with more, available with less. There are some internal mounted ones, and I do want to show you one other thing back under the cover. The motherboard on this thing starts and ends between my two hands. It is a big motherboard. And it's also very, very wide. And that's, again, because of lots and lots of other features and functions that they build into this thing. Oh, one last thing over here. Get back in the back. There's a square hole here, and there is a plug back here. That's because servers need to be up and operational all the time. And so there's room for a pair of power supplies in here, and they're not failover power supplies. It's not sitting there with one running all the time, oh, it just died, so the other one wakes up, because in that period that it would take for the detection and for bringing up the new one, the server would go down. And many times we can't have that. So here is a power supply that would go into there. It's got a little slotted connector in there. We shove it in, it goes into a slot. There's a little locking mechanism here on the back of it. And so when we plug both of these guys in, they both run all the time. And they kind of share the load to the computer. And if one of them ever fails, the other one just says, I got to provide more power. But it happens instantaneously. This is another power supply from another server. This is from, I think, an HP server. Found this dead in one of the trash cans at the data center. I asked if I could have it. They said, yeah. This little guy here out of my Super Micro is 750 watts. This big guy here next to him is also 750 watts. They just made it a little different form factor size. They're not the same width. They are the same height, because they go into what's called a 1U unit. They all do the same thing. They're just like any other power supply, with one notable exception. And that is, they have circuitry in there that talks to the computer, and the computer has circuitry to talk to it, so that if it ever fails, the server will send a message to the operator, something like that, that says, hey, we're operating on one power supply. And that's a reason to say, oh, okay, well, let's go in there. We'll pull the bad one. The other one is still functioning. We'll slap in a new good one. And now we're back to full reliability mode again. All right. That's a server. So they're commonly called pizza boxes because they're flat and they're square. They're 19 inches wide. Standard racks to hold audio gear, to hold video gear, to hold computer servers are 19 inches wide. They have spaces that are 1.25 inches high. That's called a U, or unit. A 1U is 1.25 inches high. A 2U is 2.5 inches high. 3U, 3 3/4 inches high. 4U, 5 inches high. And servers come in all those different heights, and they're totally standardized. So we slide them in. Sometimes we need some support or some rails, so that we can slide them in. You may lock them in with locking mechanisms, not key lock, so you can do that too, but they snap lock or whatever. The depth of them, there's no standard. That one's about 3 feet long. I've played with ones that are 4.5 feet long. I've played with ones that are less than 15 inches long. So you're going to use a rack server. We don't know why yet, but we'll go with, because Dave says they're cool. What are you going to use them for? Why does Dave think you need one? Or why does anybody think you need one? Well, you can use them to provide all kinds of services. One of them would be as a VPS server, a virtual private system, where basically it hosts an incredible number of virtual machines. The more CPUs, the more memory you have, right? Those are the two key components in a virtual machine. We can just boot that thing up from a virtual machine operating system like Proxmox or VMware or whatever, and then either manually or by script fire up an instance of a virtual machine there. Going to have to figure out where we're going to store the virtual hard drive, Maybe that's going to be on hard drives within there. Maybe it's going to be external, but that's a great way to go things. That's a VPS. It's a virtual machine. It shares the CPU, it shares the RAM, it shares the network interface cards, and so forth. As opposed to a box that goes up the scale called virtual private server. Why did I say VPS and VM? Virtual private server means everything in that box belongs to one customer, one user. A VDS is a virtual dedicated server. It's like a virtual machine, except it doesn't share cores. So it gets whole cores. Some virtual machines, we assign a half core or a quarter core of the CPU. VDS's customer gets whole numbers of cores as necessary. And then virtual machines, those are, as I described in the beginning. That's the wrong thing. So dedicated servers, complete computer solution. You can rent it from a NOC or from a data center. They may configure it for you. You may have to provide configuring information. But once it's all configured and up and running, they rack it. And except for what you contract with them, like if it goes down, get it back up and running again, it's yours and they don't touch it. Only for physical maintenance and things like that, or services that they offer to provide as part of their agreement with you. There are colos. Dedicated servers are typically rented or leased. A colo, which is what's going to happen to that guy next week, says you provide the server to the site. It's your server. It'll always be your server. You're just going to rent space and connection resources from them. So maybe they got to do a little bit of configuration on there so that it's compatible with the IP addresses within the data center and so forth. You can ask them to install an OS on it. You can do it before you send it. You don't have to send it. You can say, I'll order it, and they will buy it for you. And then they will lease to own it back to you, or maybe even straight charge you. But that's colo. That's co-location. You own it, but it's located at a site that ain't your site. You don't have to use a site to use a rack-mounted server. It's not something you're going to find in most homes. However, I will mention that some of us know a guy up in Canada who was the founder of the first Discord server that we all started playing with. And guy was well-funded and built his own data center in his house so that he could learn a variety of different shared operating systems. He was putting a lot of effort into Microsoft domains. But these are things you're typically going to find either at a data center or what they call on-prem at large organizations, medium organizations. And it's typically, the larger the organization, the more of those that you're going to have. And your rack is going to have routers and servers and UPSs and appliances like VoIP routers and things like that. 12 more minutes. Well, we aren't going to get through a ton of this. So you can install and operate your server remotely. I didn't dig out the pile of stuff, but that little network interface can be accessed from the outside world, and you can manage the guts of the server. You can get into BIOS. You can change the fan settings in there. You can cause it to boot in different ways that's bigger, smarter, stronger than BIOS configuration. And we do that using some kind of firmware that's built into the server. Now, sometimes, some servers, they have that firmware in there, but it's not activated until you buy a license from the manufacturer. Dell servers, they use a remote management thing called iDRAC. And they all support iDRAC, but it won't work unless you send Dell some money, and then once you've sent that to them, then you plug that number in a special way, and iDRAC wakes up, and it stays that way because it's on a per server basis, not a time basis. So that's kind of cool. The industry standard take it over remotely thing. It's kind of like VNC, but it doesn't work with the operating system. It works with the guts of the computer. It's called IPMI. I'll give you what that stands for shortly. Supermicro's use that, so do others. And other vendors sometimes use IPMI, and sometimes there's a third semi-industry standard one out there, and some have proprietaries. So motherboards will fit into a tower case and global IP addresses. So the more NICs I have here, the more global IP addresses. That's the really, really, really cool thing. Why do I not want to set this up at home? Because at home, I don't have a natural public IP address, except the one that goes to my ISP's cable modem or whatever. Now you can lease them from your ISP. They come in chunks of 5 and 14 and things like that. But data centers are already publicly exposed, and your provider has blocks of IP addresses. Usually when they colo, they will give you 1 or 5 or something like that, and you can pay for more. If you just rent a VM, it probably comes with 1 public IP address. So you don't have to mess around with port forwarding or anything like that. So that's one of the really cool things that an enterprise rack server has that a home PC doesn't have. 2 of the things. We've got the remote management stuff. We've got the other thing I talked about earlier. Sorry. Multiple CPU support. They're made to support Intel Xeon CPUs and AMD EPYC CPUs, EPYC. Versions matter. This one's kind of a funny thing. The version of your CPU. Here we go. This model, okay, 1 a.m. now, supported with its default BIOS a Xeon E5 2697A, ignore all that, version 3. Now version 3 versions of that Xeon model can support 14 cores, dual threaded. There's also a V4 version of that chip, but this BIOS won't support it. So I either have to live with 14 cores per CPU and 2 CPUs, and 2 threads per CPU. That's a lot going on here. 28, 40, 56 threads going on simultaneously. But if I want more, in this case, I was able to do that. I updated the BIOS, and now instead of supporting the V3 chip, it also supports V4 chips. There are V4 chips that have more cores than the V3 chips. And that's what I've got cooking in that machine. I got a pair of 2697A V4s. Arr. Now, what do you do with all that? Well, that's what we've been talking about. So I can put all kinds of servers in there and dedicate CPUs to each of them, spread the processes across all the multiple CPUs. But Dave, will Windows support all those CPUs? No. But Windows Domain Server, Windows Server will, and 99.75% of Linux systems support automatically native multiple CPUs up to unimaginable quantities of them. The price for the CPUs that I put in there, those 16 cores, I paid $13 a piece for them. They're a little older now, but they're still functional, and I can put ancient versions of Linux on them or the most current version of Linux on there, and it works like a champ. Talked about heat sinks. The internal fans can be insanely loud, so there's various settings that you can do with them. Never always idle. Off isn't an option, but optimal, maximum, and medium. And we always set them in Supermicros to optimal, which means they won't run unless the CPUs hit a temperature threshold, and then they turn on. And when they turn on, all 8 of those running, it is a jet engine. They're really loud, and that's another reason you don't want one of these in your house. Installing RAM. That particular box uses DDR4 server RAM. Everybody who played around in A+ learned a little bit about the the difference between server RAM and desktop RAM. Server RAM has two features that regular desktop RAM doesn't. It has error correcting functions in it, so that if 1 bit out of 8 goes in or out of RAM and it's wrong, the error correction code can detect it and fix it. 2 bits can be detected, but it can't be fixed. So that's one of two things that server RAM does that regular RAM doesn't. The other thing is called buffering or registering. And that means for every chip that holds 8 bits across it, there's one more chip to buffer the inbound and outbound. So here comes 8 bits out of the chips. Chunk, 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 chunk. They don't all come down in a nice, smooth, perfect speed and arrive exactly like this. They land kind of like this. So then they go in the buffer chip, and then they can sit there nice and shiny as 8 bits. And when it's time for them to go to the CPU or someplace, they go whoosh, 8 bits at a time, and it's lovely and it's beautiful. Regular desktop stuff doesn't do that. Other than that, it's DDR4 RAM, and if you're going to put multiple sticks in, you do it exactly the way you would do it in a desktop PC. Match the specs. Simple enough. Whoops, wrong button. Okay, we're almost done here. We got about 2 minutes left of content, and then I'm going to shut this off, and we'll do the rest next show. So what do you do with them? You make dedicated servers. You can load balance services. You can make VMs. You can make VPSs, virtual private servers. You can make virtual dedicated servers. You can make all kinds of function servers in there. Mail servers, web servers, database servers. It can be, I can put 56, more than that. Call it 60, we'll say. Clustered servers, all running together in one box. I don't need, remember about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, we made a computer cluster out of, in my case, I had 5 Raspberry Pis. We had everybody else kind of follow along the steps for 3. Okay, box of 5. Now do that with 5 regular desktop computers. You got a lot of real estate here. But do that with a virtual machine or even just a dedicated processor in that one box, and I can get 60 computers running simultaneously. All right, that's a good place to stop that. I got a little bit of close up here. I'll have pictures and stuff like that next time, so I don't have to do so much hand puppet work. Rack servers are cool. They're useful. How much money? RAM, if you buy used RAM, and it's usually pretty darn good. I've only bought used, and my old company bought a lot of used RAM. They bought a lot of new when they ran out. About the cheapest you can get it is insanely cheap, especially compared to desktop RAM. 55 cents a gig is what I got in there. So about 150 bucks for 256 gigs. And it's such a deal that I got another 128 gigs sitting there waiting for my next server to build. So I didn't spend 225 bucks for 384 gigs of RAM. That box itself costs 100 bucks shipped. It's not the newest. It is absolutely a capable machine. It's a lovely machine. And let's see, I had to buy a hard drive caddy. I didn't have to, but I did. That was 5 bucks. Oh, I had to buy CPUs, pair of CPUs, 13 bucks a piece, was 26 bucks. So I'm into this bear for less than 300 bucks. And its capability is just incredible. All right, let me check messages here, and then I will close up the show. Give me a couple minutes to clean up, and then I'll head over to the Discord server. Let me repost the Discord server invite and contact info right quick. If you've joined us recently, you could go back up to the top of our little discussion and find all this stuff. But since you're here watching the bottom of the chat feed, I'm just going to be a nice guy. Do it that way. Man, that rain, it's not coming down hard, but it's coming down and the temperature's coming down, and that just gives everybody in the Houston area heart palpitations. All right, so the The ADRAMADA Discord server link is in there. If you're not a member, come and join us. And especially tonight, when we're just going to get together and hang and shoot the breeze. Any topic. Doesn't have to be tech. Can be anything. Let's see. I got to go down to the bottom of this page. All right. So I was going to read and see what you guys are talking about. See if I missed anything. Not a CompTIA admin. A router or a mod on a CompTIA sub. Delay should be less. Depends on the links. Will it run Fortnite? Yeah, so they're servers. You don't even install them with graphical environments unless you're talking about Microsoft server. And then you need another USB port so that you can have your boot thumb drive to boot the operating system or to load the operating system, and a keyboard and a mouse. That can be a real pain. What I do when I'm working on a Microsoft server and a boot drive is I use a wireless mouse and keyboard that has a common dongle. So that goes into one of the two. There's normally just two USB ports. And then the dongle goes into the flash drive goes into the other USB port. So the video card that's in there isn't designed to handle real graphics. It's designed to handle a textual graphical interface. So no, she ain't gonna run Fortnite. Heck of a question. Thank you. I too have never played Fortnite. First time hearing of VPS. Yeah, VPSs, VPNs. Well, VPNs, that's a virtual private server is one thing. Virtual private network means, or a virtual private server means I own this much of the server. VPS is another word for VM when you really get down to it. iDRAC is fantastic. Okay. I've used iDRAC. I find it to be as usable, maybe a little friendlier than IPMI, but once you get used to either of them, they're pretty much the same thing. Oh yeah, that's what I was going to tell you. So I got the game tomorrow night, OSU and the Texans, or Longhorns rather, and cold day, football, that's two of a three-part combination. In my world, there is one more thing that you need, and that's a bowl of chili. So 3 days ago, I made a nice pot of Texas Red, we call that down here. Texas Red is chili without beans. If you add chili to your beans in the vicinity of a Texan, you will wind up with a rattlesnake bite on your butt. They just do not see it that way. But I get creative with my meats. I'll do ground beef on the rarest of occasions. Usually I do chunks of pork and chunks of beef. But this one, new round. I used ground meat, but it wasn't beef. Ground elk and chunks of lamb. So this is elk, lamb, Texas Red, and it is fantastico. Shrimp gumbo and shrimp sandwiches and po' boys are good too. Yeah, $13 CPU. Isn't that incredible? That's 16 cores running at somewhere between 2.5 and 3.4 gigahertz. That's stunning. Stunning. Here at home, I got a fairly stout server, $150, runs all my virtual infrastructure. Yeah, you are well equipped. And you're doing some really amazing work, P4. All right, well, what do you say we wind this puppy up and then head over to Discord server, those of you who are going to join us, watch Discord. For the show next week, I got a gig on Thursday. I don't know the details of it. Probably not possible to do a Thursday night show. I had somebody semi-lined up to take over the channel, but didn't work out possible. If you want to have an interest or know somebody who does, I'll turn over the reins. Failing that, I want to do a show next week, as I don't want to start a bad habit of blowing off shows. So I'm going to make Friday my backup. I do have a gig on Friday, but I should be able to set it up very early and be back home in time for a show. And that's going to be whenever the next show is. Worst case, the following week. It'll be part 2 of Rack Servers. I have some great shows in the offing that have mostly been written and are ready to rock. We're going to do a show on NetPlan, which is something I talked about last year before we went on sabbatical. I got a show on logical operators, software or hardware implementations of things like OR and NOR and XOR and NAND and so forth. So those are going to be a couple of really interesting shows. They don't sound like it by their titles. Trust me, you're going to love them. Okay, so with that, my good friends, hey, it took me a while to figure out how to start things up again. But we did get it started and did so on time. Now let's see if we can get it shut down the same way. Closing, I wish you all a great rest of the week. Please take care of each other. Take serious steps to stay healthy. And if at all possible, call or visit your parents. And of course, never forget, technology is great, but the greatest resource we have are you and I. And with that, I bid you good night. I'll see you on ADRAMADA next Thursday on the other platforms that I'm on, including Discord in the next couple of minutes. And until then, remember, how you do anything is how you do everything. Eat up or Later, guys.